All right. We have here Hawaii, Alaska. Now let's go up here to Maine. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. Rhode Island's that tiny little rectangle right there. You probably can't even see it in the video. Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. Are y'all keeping up? Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, California. Did we say Nevada? Hi, I'm John, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be covering part 4 as to why the United States of America is the way the United States of America is. And today I'm going to be talking about patriotism and patriotic. Why are we Americans so patriotic and so full of patriotism? Why do we fly our flag? Why are we so proud of it? Well, there's several reasons for that. But before I get into that, I got to tell you, I like going out on walks 3-4 miles at a time. I enjoy hiking, okay? I do. I get up in the morning and I try and go on a 3 to 4 mile walk, weather permitting. And the other morning when I went out on a 3-mile walk, I got to thinking, if I'm going to do a video based on patriotism and being patriotic, then I should take a picture of every house I see on my walk that's got the flag flying. And now I'm going to take those photos that I took of all the houses with the flag, and I'm going to put them in this video. So you're going to get to see these photos as I talk to make this video, okay? Patriotism and patriotic. Now I'm not going to cover all the reasons as to why we're patriotic and full of patriotism. I'm going to cover about 3, okay? And I'm going to start from the beginning, okay? Like 13 original colonies on the North American continent. 13 original British colonies on the North American continent get tired of being under British rule. So they fight for their freedom and they win. Then those 3 nation states create a union that they call the United States of America. Now, how can you not be patriotic? How can you not be full of patriotism, right? They just fought and won against the most powerful military known in the world at the time. Okay? So now, 1812 rolls around. Not even 100 years after the War of Independence, 1812 rolls around, and the United States is at war with Britain. Okay? The British didn't learn their lesson the first time around, so they had to come back for seconds. So, the War of 1812 kicks off. By 1814, the British had captured the American capital city and the American Capitol building. And the British had burnt the Capitol building to the ground. Okay, totally destroyed the Capitol building and pretty much the capital city. They then pulled up in Chesapeake Bay with their boats, their naval ships. Fort McHenry, the U.S. Fort McHenry, was there at Chesapeake. Okay? The British put troops on the ground. These troops come under attack by the American forces at night. The British decide they're going to attack Fort McHenry in the middle of the night. Mistake. The United States, they pushed the British soldiers out. They put the British soldiers in retreat. September 13th, the morning of September 13th, 1814, the Vice Admiral in charge of the British Navy tells the British Navy to open fire on Fort McHenry. Okay? Before the morning of the 13th of September, the commander of Fort McHenry told the American troops to raise the American flag over the ramparts. The American flag that the troops raised over the ramparts in Fort McHenry was 40 feet by 42 feet. It was huge. It could be seen from miles. Okay? The British in the Chesapeake Bay, they couldn't get too close to Fort McHenry because Fort McHenry had its own cannons it could fight back with. Not only that, there were boats and ships and things that were sunk within the Chesapeake Bay, so they had to be careful of where they were going. But they could reach Fort McHenry with their cannons. And they bombarded Fort McHenry for over almost a good 24 hours. Fort McHenry was just being bombarded and bombarded and bombarded, non-stop. I mean, could you imagine being non-stop bombarded for almost 24 hours? The British had told the Americans in Fort McHenry, you lower your flag and we'll take that as your surrender. Okay? You surrender, the war will be over. And we, the British, will have taken back the North American continent. And all you got to do is lower that flag. And the British aimed their cannons at the flag. The Americans, they weren't going to have it. They were not going to surrender. They knew what it meant to surrender, and they weren't going to do it. And they held that flag up. As they died, they'd remove their bodies and take the place of those who died. By the time the British finished bombarding Fort McHenry, pretty much the only thing holding the flag up were the dead bodies of the American patriots. Francis Scott Key wrote a poem about what took place at Fort McHenry. And that poem that Francis Scott Key wrote became known as our national anthem. We sing the first 2 to 3 paragraphs of Francis Scott Key's poem. Right? It's our Star Spangled, the "Oh Say Can You See," our Star Spangled Banner. So, yeah, how can you not be patriotic over that? How can you not be proud of something like that, right? You look back in American history, if you're an American, you've got to think, wow, you know, our ancestors, our founding fathers and our ancestors were just these amazing people. All right, I mean, you got to think about, that's one of the reasons why we're patriotic. And then we have World War I kickoff, right, in the 1900s, early 1900s. Right, the United States didn't get involved in World War I at first. The French and the British were at a stalemate with the Germans in the trenches. Nobody was going anywhere, right? But they were losing people. Right? They needed reinforcements, so the United States came in to help France. France was our ally during the War of Independence. So, and they're still our allies, right? So we go over there to help them. We send troops, and between the United States, American troops coming into the First World War and the British coming up with the tank, right? We were able to defeat the Germans and push the Germans out of France and back to Germany. Then World War II kicks off, right? World War II kicks off. We got Nazi Germans taking over Europe, and we got the Japanese over in the Pacific. The United States wasn't at war. The United States didn't even want to get involved in the war until December 7th. December 7th was when Delaware joined the Union known as the United States of America. December 7th was the very start of the United States. Delaware was the first state to join the Union on December 7th. And now we got the Japanese in 1941 bombing the naval base in Hawaii on December 7th. Is that a coincidence? Some people might say, yeah, I say it's not a coincidence. I think the Japanese knew exactly what they were doing on December 7th. I honestly think they knew that that was the day in our history when our sovereign nation was first started, December 7th. So now we're at war with the Japanese in the Pacific, and now we got Hitler declaring war on the United States, so now we're going to war over in Europe. We helped kick the Germans, the Nazi Germans, the communists, out of North Africa and then out of Europe, and we helped end the war in Europe. Then we defeat the Japanese over in the Pacific and end the war in the Pacific. We fought 2 wars on 2 fronts. Come on. Who else can say they done that? Who else can say they fought 2 wars on 2 fronts and won both wars? Right? And then became even more powerful after that, right? And then we go into a Cold War with the Soviet Union, right? The communist Russians. I know a lot of people will say that the Russians weren't communists, they were socialists. Socialism is communism. Socialism is the beginning of communism. If you're going to be true in knowledge, be true in the fact that socialism is pretty much basically communism, okay? It's the first step. So we are now in a Cold War with the Soviets. We're going to become even more patriotic. Okay? At one point we have the creation of our Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. The Pledge of Allegiance of our flag was actually started for the boys' youth groups. Okay, it was a way for boys' youth groups to help the boys in the youth groups feel more patriotic. Okay, and feel more, proud and pride in the United States. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag it just blew up. It just became this. It just spread. Okay, it just went through all of the schools. Okay, and then everyone started pledging allegiance to the flag. So now everyone pledges allegiance to the flag of the United States, and we also take an oath when we join our military. Whenever we go into certain law enforcement, or we go into the federal government or the state government, whenever we get elected, as senators and representatives and governors and the president of the United States, and whatnot, we all take an oath. In the military too, take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America and to uphold the rights and privileges of the United States of America, the Constitution. All right. So, yeah, we're proud of our flag. We're full of patriotism. We should be. I mean, heck, look at this way. The Soviets, right? They were the first ones to send a satellite into space, and they were the first ones to send man into space. But we Americans, we were the first ones to put man on the moon. Okay? Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who are going to claim that the United States never sent people to the moon. It was all fake. Well, if the Americans' lunar landing was fake, okay, and just propaganda, every country in the world would have had to have been in on that, okay, that scheme or propaganda, okay. Not every country in the world would be in on that, all right. They would be calling horse. They would be proving it, okay. There's proof that the United States landed man on the moon. The Chinese satellite that went around the moon, the Indian satellite that went around the moon, the Russian satellite, I do believe, that went around the moon, they all picked up photos of the American lunar landing sites with the lunar modules. There's like 3 photos of 3 of our lunar modules actually sitting on the moon, where we've actually, from when we landed man on the moon, right? So we're fixing to send we're fixing to send people to Mars. I mean, come on. How can you not be patriotic? How can you not be a proud American, right? That's why we are the way we are, because we have a history of things that we can be very, very proud of and have patriotic, feelings over. Okay, our flag has 13 stripes for the original 13 states, and those original 13 states also have a star on the flag. So there are only states that have both. And then we have 50 stars for 50 states within our union. You can't get any better. Well, I hope you liked and enjoyed that video, and if you did, please hit the like, subscribe, and share and notification bell. It would help me out greatly. And remember, knowledge is a good thing. truth in knowledge is an even better thing. And true knowledge, that's power.